Hi, everybody. Welcome to Let's Get on Brand, an interview series where we discuss how design can impact your organization's impact. I'm Savannah, and today I'm super honored to be with my former professor, Victor Davila. And he's a man of many talents. He's an illustrator, designer, associate professor at the University of Central Florida's School of Visual Arts and Design. And he's worked on everything from editorial illustrations to children's books to interactive games, animated characters. Honestly, this man, his portfolio is huge. But he really worked with a lot of cool, awesome organizations like Highlights Magazine, DreamWorks, and Scholastic. So beyond that, he's collaborated with nonprofits, schools, community-centered organizations, bringing meaningful messages to life through thoughtful design. He's a pillar not only in the nonprofit world, but also in the design world. He's the kindest person I've ever met, and we're diving in today to kind of just pick his brain and get some wisdom to help you all out. Victor, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks so much for having me, Savannah. This is awesome. I'm so happy for you. I'm so
Thank you.
stoked.
No, amazing. I'm so pumped. You really led my design journey and influenced so much of my career that like having you on here has just been it's such a blessing and I'm excited for you to share your wisdom.
I appreciate you saying that. When I get students like you, it seems like my main responsibility is just to stay out of your way because I know that you guys are going to do something awesome. So I just have to kind of support you, but just kind of like let you do your thing and stay out of your way so I don't hamper you. But I knew you were going to do awesome things, and here you are in your journey. So I'm so proud to see you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I know some more about your journey, but please share how you got to where you are today and pretty much what led you here.
So like you mentioned, I teach at the University of Central Florida, and I never intended to teach. I've always been an illustrator. I wanted to get into animation at some point. I wanted to be a comic book artist at some point and things like that. And my first major, I don't know if I've ever shared with you, was animation. But at the time, my grades weren't good enough to get into the animation track. So I found graphic design, and I put the portfolio in, and they accepted me into the UCF program. I graduated from UCF as well, and I find it a real blessing to have gone through animation or through graphic design because it seems graphic design is the culmination or at least like kind of the overlap of a whole bunch of different things. So within the graphic design world, you can do illustration, you can do animation, you can do all these things. And it's kind of led me to meet and be involved with a lot of really cool projects and a lot of really cool things. So I've really enjoyed that. So I worked in-house at UCF for a bit. I got my master's degree while I worked there, and then the position opened up, and it was all kind of like accidental in a lot of ways because it doesn't feel like it's planned. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, I'll do that. When it came the opportunity came up, I was like, sure, that sounds fun. Let's go do it. And I ended up teaching. I've been teaching for 14 years. No, the math. 2011, I started. What is the, yeah, 14 years.
Mhm.
And as of this recording in 2025, and it's arguably it's my favorite gig because working with the students, being energized by what you guys did or do, being involved in this whole community of people who are really interested in learning, and it makes me rethink a lot of the things I do because I think one of the tough parts about teaching is when somebody asks you how you do something that you've done in autopilot for 20 years, and then you have to kind of like ask yourself, so like, all right, how do I or why do I do that? And is there a better way to do something?
Mhm.
So all that is, I highly encourage anyone, if you get the opportunity to teach, to go ahead and try to teach. Because it's a really great experience from my experience at least.
Well, and from when I was in your class, I remember you didn't only teach your kind of your hands were in a lot of different things from AIGA to Limitless to a lot of other things. So why did you branch out into so many different areas and what were those areas?
So I really like putting myself in a situation where I'm helping others. I really like the idea of using whatever it is that I can do, whether it's drawing or whether just lifting a box to be able to support someone in their journey or help them out in something like that. And with AIGA being the Professional Association for Design, and we have a chapter here in Orlando, I also saw it as an opportunity to grow my career as things that I wasn't readily comfortable with, and it put me in a position to be comfortable with it. So I'm not a great public speaker. I'm not, I get very nervous. I get very anxious. And I recognize that one of the things that I needed to do is figure that part out. And with AIGA, at least with the Orlando chapter, it gave me the opportunities to start meeting other people. I would volunteer. I think a lot of people in our industry are kind of like these wallflowers, and we're kind of like to ourselves. And it gave me one of the things I did is I volunteered to be the person when I first joined the board, give out the tickets and take the monies and let people in. And that really forced me to meet people and actually start talking to people. And I kept working my way up to other things. And eventually I became the president, the membership director. I was an co-education director. I was a vice president, co-president, and I worked my way up to the president of the AIJ Orlando chapter. And when you get into that position, then you're forced to introduce and be in front of people, regardless of what you want to do. You have that responsibility. So that was one of the reasons I joined AIGA Orlando and also Creative Mornings Orlando, which is something I'm still involved with. Um, but also I also feel it's an extension of teaching, because one of the things I feel it's important is that we as teachers kind of practice what we preach and put ourselves in a position where the students can see what we do. I was in an event. It was a Creative Mornings event where we had, and one of my current students recently shared with me that um, they were sitting next to a student from UCF, but they were in a different major. And they were kind of chatting, and my student asked the other student, said, "How did you find out about this?" So I was like, "Oh, I got the email, I got Instagram or whatever, I found it, word of mouth or whatever." And so that's how I found out about it, and that's why I came. And then that student asked my student, "Is like, how did he find out about it?" And she just pointed to me. I was like, "Well, that's my professor." And I like that idea of like, um, me and my colleagues, Ashley Taylor, who's another one, does the same thing, that they see us as an active member of our community and not somebody that just kind of like they see in the classroom and then that's all they do.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping by example that that they'll see it and then know that when I graduate, when I become a member of this community, I can try to be someone who gives back and become a mentor, become a leader or whatever it is. And then through that, I worked my way up to now I'm on the national board of AIGA, which is a different beast and it has like its own different challenges, but it's really fulfilling. And I was also part of the design educators community at AIGA, which is one of the best groups I've ever been involved with, where we did programming for teachers, for K through 12 and higher ed and all that. So it's been really, really fulfilling. And sometimes it feels like a second job, but I think it's something that when you're part of the community, you really I think design as a whole, as you probably already know, it's a very empathetic community. It's a very kind of like we try to help. So I think that just kind of goes with part of our MO. We just want to be the people who make it kind of like just make it more easier in some ways for other people.
Yeah. And I think that's like the essence of design as well, because that's the whole goal is like you're trying to make these things easier for people to understand. So it's funny that you say that in the community, we're trying to make it easier for people. It's like that's also our job too.
Right, right. You're
So
supposed to communicate. You're supposed to kind of reach out to people. That's our whole thing.
yeah.
And I'm also the mindset of, with all the things that we have going on in the world today, that I really think that the designers were naturally empathetic, right? For the most part, because we have to put ourselves in other people's shoes. So I think by relaying or at least kind of like engaging with other people, sharing our mindset with other people, I think we try to promote the empathy with other people, being able to listen to other people, we be able to listen to different points of view and try to come up with some sort of kind of like conversation as opposed to being so binary,
Yeah.
this or that, black or white or whatever it is, like we tend to be in our society right now.
Yeah.
If that
And
makes sense.
no, it does because really, I mean, I know for me when I'm in a design project, it feels so personal. I mean, because creativity is like an extension of yourself, but when you get involved in their mission and their vision and what they're a part of because you're listening and learning and you're empathizing with what they need and where they want to be. So
Hmm.
you're so involved. And I think that that puts your heart into the work when you can understand their mission and you're like, okay, I'm for this, let's go. And you
Yeah.
can see it in the design. So I don't. for you, I know you've worked with a lot of different organizations, some of them being nonprofit, some of them being for profits. So what has been the most important thing in working with these different kinds of clients and organizations for you?
I think, all the ones that I've worked with have provided something to their clients that I really believe in. So there's a couple off the top of my head that I can share. One of them is obviously Limitless Solutions. One of them is New Hope for Kids. Limitless Solutions creates bionic arms for kids with limb differences. So they do it free of charge for the kids, make their lives a lot easier with what they do. And I really, really kind of like, again, it kind of attracts me. New Hope for Kids provides two things. They provide witches for kids with like really not necessarily only terminal diseases, but also kind of kids with real hard challenges. And they also provide counseling, grief counseling for kids who have lost someone close to them. And again, that feels like they're doing the real important work. And I've also recently started working with a company out in New York called Adaptive Design, who create these objects for I think mostly kids to make their lives easier with whether it's some sort of chair or some sort of desktop or some sort of like element that would kind of make their everyday life a little bit less challenging. So that kind of thing really, really attracts me because in a lot of ways, I don't understand the science behind what limitless solution. Their engineers are super smart. They walk into any room and the whole kind of like the IQ of the collective room just by the present just raises 500% or whatever. So I don't understand the science behind it. I don't understand how they do what they do, but I do I do try to find it a way that I can contribute myself, and that would be through illustration. That would be through the ways of things that I can control.
Mhm.
I know what to do, and we all have to find things that are, ways that we could give back, and that's my way. I'm not going to go in there and invent a new bionic arm because I the science is beyond me, but I can make the graphics or the illustrations to support that.
And have you ever seen a kid have something that you designed? Like, have you seen that in person, like that reaction of something like your illustrations on like a bionic arm or something like that?
Not so much a bionic arm because I'm not directly responsible with creating of the bionic arms. But I did have the opportunity to work on this comic book. So there's this family out of Seattle. Zach is his name. He's one of our bionic kids, limitless bionic kids. And he got his arm when he was really young. And one of the things that they learned early on is I think their original designs looked very kind of like flesh-like, right? Because the idea was that they would create these arms for them that wouldn't stand out. And the feedback that they got from the kids who would are the recipients of these arms, like, no, we want something like cool that stands out. We want some bionic thing. We want something that emulates like, Iron Man or whatever it is. So they wanted something really cool. And that's what they provided. But for the most part, it's like the art students who design it or paint on them and things like that. But I've been able to work on the comic book. And what Zach did in his, I think at the time he was like 9 or something like that. Now he must be like 16 or 17. But Zach decided with his brother Nico, um, I'm sorry, his dad's Nico. Um, the family decided to create a comic book that would to raise money to build the arms for the next child. So he decided in his young age to create something that gives back to his own community. And so with these comic books that he wrote, he created the characters. It's called Bionic Kid, which is loosely based on him and his family and things like that. They created these stories, which are the first issue some of our students illustrated, the second issue I illustrated for the most part. And being able to see, like getting the feedback from Zach and his family about how his creations have come to life, I think was really, really fulfilling in a lot of ways. So it's Zach and it's Christo, his brother, and Nico, his dad, and they have these stories and they're all kind of represented somehow in the comic book. But being able to see like whatever random characters that they created come to life, that was a really cool moment for me. So it's these little things like that that I think make it all worthwhile.
Mhm. It's so impressionable, and you're like, I was a part of that, and it's
Yeah.
doing after, which is really cool. And you can make like this kid's dream come true, kind of. You're like, hey, I see myself in this comic book, which that's so awesome. That
It's it never gets old, and when they, because kids are really honest.
yeah,
If they don't
like
like it,
that
they will
sucks.
tell you. Yeah, exactly. But the fact that he really dug it and they all really liked it, I think it was just really fulfilling. And all my interactions, all the things that I've done with Limitless have been like that, where it's been really, really fun. And the folks at Limitless, Albert and Matt Dombrowski is my colleague at the School of Visual Arts, and he's the creative director there. So he kind of like, recruits me for a lot of things, and now I'm an affiliate faculty there, which I really love. But John and everybody, I think they just do such good work, and they're super smart, and they could be doing many, many things, uh, in many different industries. So the fact that they decide to take their knowledge and their expertise to help kids with limb differences that need it, I think is really inspiring to me.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And being a part of these nonprofit organizations that are giving back, like you mentioned, is fulfilling, and it makes us as designers more excited to do this. So I know that you've worked with others as well. So this one I know is more specific to where you're at. I think they're located at UCF, right? I remember their building.
Limitless, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Limitless
So
Solutions is, I use, yeah.
awesome. So they're a little bit more accessible, right? But
Mhm.
for other experiences with different organizations and nonprofits, how, in your experience, what gets in the way of these organizations using design effectively, and how have you helped them maybe overcome that?
I think the main challenge that these nonprofits have is that a lot of times, not all the times, but a lot of times they don't have an in-house designer
Mhm.
to help them kind of like bring their message, allow the message to be a little bit more cohesive. So what they do, with no fault of their own, is that they take a lot of different designers, volunteer their services to do the work, and sometimes it comes out when you put it all together, it comes out a little bit haphazard. No unifying look, no unifying brand guidelines, logo, or whatever. So that's the challenge, and I think there have been examples of nonprofits who have get a designer to create a brand that will kind of like go across everything that they do, from their t-shirts to their car wraps to their brochures or whatever. And what that does is, with the study of the company that I'm thinking of, it actually allowed their resulted in their donations to going up like 50 or 60% the next year.
Yeah.
And I think that creates a look, the design, when it's a consistent design, creates a look for the people who are donating or giving their monies, to look at them like they have their act together.
Mhm.
And that's a little bit tougher to do because, nonprofits are doing really, really great work. And their focus is, as it should be, on the kids or on whatever community they're serving. And sometimes the design isn't the most important thing that they have to tackle at that
Yeah.
particular time. So it's not an easy thing to juggle, but I think design will help, does help make the organization feel a little bit more kind of like streamlined, or like that the message is more consistent.
And I agree. It's they have very intentional missions, like you mentioned, whether it's kids, community, whatever it might be, then that's their focus, and that's obviously super important. But when design is lacking, then it doesn't help their credibility, because especially if they're maybe a newer nonprofit, newer in
Hmm.
the community, then not having that presence or working on that presence, then eventually just hurts them instead of
Yeah.
in your work with these various nonprofits, have you ever had an experience where you've had to kind of convince them that design was important and that this would help them?
All the nonprofits that I've worked with have had an understanding of what, the design can do, and they've been very excited. Usually what I found with the nonprofits is, like, if you volunteer for design or for whatever, and they're really eager, they're like, yeah, we would love your help. Please help us. And they're very eager to have someone kind of like be there to represent them or to support them in that way. So I never had anybody have any pushback, other than, we suggest like changing a logo or whatever. And sometimes they're like very married to the logo. Sometimes that's a little bit tough, but I think for the most part, they're really, really stoked. And as you might remember from being a student of mine, I don't believe in free work. I think we should be designers bring value to these projects, so I think we should be compensated fairly for whatever it is. However, I do believe in pro bono work, which I think in my head they're two different things. And pro bono, you're making a choice of doing free work for an organization that you support. And I think that's where the difference is because you're not just doing work for you're doing work for a specific thing. And I do feel that that's important. And I also feel, again, it might have been something that I might have said when you were in my class, but I do feel that it's a lot of these nonprofits are could be a really good opportunity for designers to embellish their portfolios in some ways because sometimes a student graduates and they're kind of like a little bit bummed, but that the a lot of the projects that they have in their portfolios are the same projects that their classmate has in the portfolio. They just kind of look, because it's the prompts that we have in class. So I think, reaching out to a nonprofit that you really believe in and offering your services to them as a pro bono service, or, sometimes the nonprofits might have grants that actually allows them to pay designers. So, there's an opportunity for you to get paid. But I think it's a good opportunity for designers to expand what they could do and a lot of times these nonprofits might give you certain liberties into how you do your design. So it might be a fun project other than something that might be a little bit kind of like not so fun.
What I do think is interesting about nonprofits is that you're almost talking to two different audiences sometimes.
Hmm.
So you're talking to donors and high
Yeah.
level individuals who have the funds to support the nonprofit, but then you're speaking to the community they're serving. So let's say for like Limitless Solutions, you want to cater to children as well, right? This is who you're targeting. But then also there's this aspect of, okay, like we have to look professional enough though, because
Yeah.
these high-end individuals need to fund this so that way we can help the kids. So have you ever experienced that balance of trying to toe the line between who they're serving and maybe catering to these larger scale individuals?
So for New Hope for Kids, our class, as a class project, as you might remember, we would do the annual reports for New Hope for Kids. And that's always the challenge. And we have Gloria, who is I don't know what her exact title is, but she's like the marketing person over there, Gloria Capozzi, at New Hope for Kids. And she's very generous with her time and her information, her knowledge. But the fact that it has 4 kids in the title, even though the kids go from 0 to 19 that they serve, or however, whatever their age group is, maybe not 0, but you know what I'm saying, like really
Mhm.
young to kind of like late teenagers. Um, I think the thought process always comes out that it has to be kind of kiddish. So a lot of designs that we might see might have like, those blocks that little kids play with or something along those lines, something that is very kiddie. And we have to make sure one of the feedbacks that we give the students or Gloria gives the students is that we have to make sure, like you're saying, that we're not just about kids. We are not an art organization. We are there to support their grief, to get them through hard times or to give them wishes, right? So in to your point, that annual report has to speak not only not maybe not so much to the kids,
Mhm.
but to the parents who are bringing the kids in,
Yeah.
but also to the donors who are bringing their money. So it has to capture some sort of personality that is welcoming and hopeful. Because the other thing is that the subject matter in this case is fairly heavy,
Yeah.
right? It's talking about grief, it's talking about loss, it's talking about challenges in their lives. So you want to make sure that you focus on the hope part
Mhm.
as opposed to some of those kind of like heavy topics.
Mhm.
So, the bright colors and the typefaces that are approachable or how we tell the story with it. So I think it's kind of like we want to make sure, just like any other design project, that we're able to identify the audience and we're also able to identify what the goal is for whatever project that we're doing. So if it is something for parents, maybe it could skew one way. If it's something for specifically for donors, we can skew it a different ways. Or if it's some sort of a money fundraising event, it could kind of look at a different way. And each one could have its different audience while still keeping the umbrella of whatever the brand guidelines is of that organization.
Yeah.
So it's that balance, but the brand guidelines, as you know, always kind of keeps us honest, right? It kind of brings us back to where we gotta.
Yes. No, and they're the rule book for what you're doing, and you can have fun within rules.
Yeah.
And so, which is awesome. But have you ever worked with an organization or maybe a client of yours who didn't have brand guidelines, and then you not only had to develop that, but kind of figure this out and be like, hey, this is who we're targeting, and this is what we're doing, and maybe what was that experience like for you?
I think that is a work in progress. Actually, it's a work in progress right now because that's one of the things that we're trying to deal with one of the companies that I'm working, one of those nonprofits I'm working with, because I think everybody understands where we want to go, but we might not exactly know how to get there. And that's where I try to help. That's where they partner with other people to try to help and try to come up with like that succinct thing. But it's sometimes tough, but I think it's making sure that we respect each other's expertise, because if you go in there and um, you have to be able to talk to your clients in any, not only for nonprofits, but in any situation. You want to make sure that you go in there, being able to talk their language and being able to understand what they're trying to do so that you're able to provide the best solutions for them, or at least provide them options of things that they could do. I think sometimes we might go in there with like, we know everything and we're the designers and we're the boss. And, like I obviously have the best taste in the world because I went to design school or whatever. And sometimes it doesn't quite work out like that because they know their industry um, more than, they're in their industry more than you are. So I think it's making sure it's a collaboratory experience, and making sure that you both provide your ideas and try to come up with a solution that works for everybody, and be able to be respectful of what everybody brings to the table. And sometimes it's easier said than done. Sometimes you have to kind of like, you know, um, you have to, I think when you come up with your solutions, you have to make sure you have the A, B, and C of the reasons why. And it's not just arbitrary, like we should do this because, this typeface is fun or whatever. It's like, no, what's the reason behind everything you do?
Mhm.
And I think if you have those reasons, if you cross your T's and dot your I's as best you could, how and explain how this could help their organization, I think they're more receptive. I don't think anybody likes to be talked down to.
Mhm.
So I think just going in there with a collaboratory spirit, I think works.
And for both ends, like you mentioned, like designer and client or whoever this individual you're helping is, for both ends, it's like, okay, let's be open-minded together because you're the expert in your field, I'm the expert in mine. And
Yeah,
so we're coming together and really, if we're both trying to push these things that maybe don't align, we're like, okay, let's go back and why are we doing the things we're doing, right? And so
yeah,
I
yeah,
remember I've had some clients that they have a vision in their mind, and like most people do, they have a vision of what they want. um but then when I come in, or when a designer comes in and you're like, hey, this is the reason I did it, and I'm using your own words, like this is what you wanted
yeah,
and here it is, they're like, oh, wait a second, maybe I didn't, or maybe they're like, actually no, I still want this. So
yeah,
sometimes it's fun, but I think that communication is very important in the process too, especially when you're working with organizations that their mission is so valuable to the community. So I really think that that is very important what you mentioned.
yeah, yeah.
I know we've talked a bit about this, but you've always like encouraged your students to use their skills for good. But and you mentioned it's important for designers to work with these nonprofits, but why do you think a designer or a nonprofit should take this leap and work with a designer, or a designer to work with a nonprofit? What do you think the benefit is?
I mean, I think you get fulfilled very kind of like lifts your spirits in a lot of ways. It kind of like makes you feel like you're giving back in a way that you might have not been able to give back before. I think it also, as a designer, as the designer in some of these places, it kind of makes me feel like I'm contributing to somebody's betterment without exactly knowing uh, much about the organization or that community beforehand. Like I mentioned before, I think the benefits from an organization to work for a designer is because it kind of like streamlines your message. It kind of gets everybody on the same page as to where you want to go, or where you should be going in an effort to bring your monies in, to bring your fundraising, make your fundraising higher and things like that. I guess in that aspect, it's just like any other business where good design will hopefully help you communicate to your audience a little bit better, and that communication will bring their buy-in to what you're trying to do, and hopefully that'll bring the funds in that you're looking for. So in that sense, I think it's very similar to any business. Um, but I think I think a lot of these nonprofits are doing the good work that supports other people, and they need support. So from the designer part, I think that's a great reason to do something. From somebody building the portfolios, I think it's a great way to have unique pieces in your portfolio. And it might even introduce ways to be able to do things that you might have not done before, like you can experiment, like maybe if you do a brief animation, you've never done an animation before because nobody's asked you. It's like, well, now it's a good opportunity to learn,
Mhm.
that kind of thing, to kind of like just explore certain things. And usually what happens is like a lot of times the pro bono client will, since you're doing it for no cost or low cost or whatever, they're kind of more open. It's like, yeah, do whatever you want. We're just happy that you're working with us, right? So they give you certain freedom to what you're trying to do.
Yes.
Um, but I just find it very, very satisfying, very fulfilling. And I mean, I think a lot of designers too are very kind of hesitant to talk about like money.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what do I charge? What do I do this? It just takes that out of the equation, right? It's
Like
like you don't have to
it's
worry.
free.
You can just do it. But that said, I do feel it's important to set limitations, set boundaries. That's a better word as to what you can do because you don't want to overpromise. You
Mhm.
don't want to kind of like say it's like, yeah, I'll work for you for free forever, and then suddenly you have all these. You want to be able to kind of set these boundaries because ultimately, this is probably not your full-time paid job, so you want to make sure you don't overpromise, and then kind of like not be able to do what you promised that you're going to do.
I think we've all been there at one point where you've overpromised or like you're like, okay, I'm doing this for $5 right now. And so you're like, I'm gonna
Yeah,
do this and you work super hard. But at the end of the day, it does give you that experience and kind of boundaries for later. So that is important. And
yeah.
I think I wish I would have applied earlier in my design career. So I was like, I'll just do anything. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm burnt out. So
Everything's a learning experience. Now
yes,
you know, right? As
now I
as long
know.
as you learned it.
Exactly. What would you say for, because I know you've worked with more established nonprofits or maybe some that have
Mhm.
you or other individuals kind of giving them advice. But what about smaller teams that maybe don't either have the funds for a designer or an in-house designer? What are some ways that they can present themselves better as a brand?
I think I'll give you an example. This one of the organizations I'm currently working for. I went in saying it's like, yeah, I can help you out. This is the design, and I said, we've tried to set boundaries. It's like my day job's at school, so I have classes from this month to whatever. But during the summers, I can kind of like try to knock out something if I can. And I was thinking like, oh, they're gonna want a new logo, they're gonna want the new whatever, a new brochure. Their main thing that they needed at that particular moment was a one sheet poster that just kind of had like the things that they're offering that they can give to their schools, that they can put on the walls, and it was something really, really simple. And it's like, yeah, I can help you with that. So I think we kind of come up with these things that we're going to change their world and everything's going to be. So I learned from that. I was like, no, it's not about me. It's like what they need at that particular time. And then I come to find out afterward that that little simple brochure that I was like, oh, that's just a little poster. It's not even a brochure, it's a poster. Apparently, it brought the monies in like a certain percent. So it kind of like, because it made it easier for the teachers to know what they're ordering or what they need or something along those lines. So it's one of those things that sometimes we come in with our own ideas of like what we can do, and then we're humbled by the fact it's like, no, it's their needs. We're trying to help them.
Mhm.
So whatever it is.
But for so somebody like that, like nonprofits like that or organizations, they maybe know what they need, but they don't have the funds or maybe the connections to a designer. What are some ways that they can just start building their brand presence maybe on their own?
I think a good way to do so is maybe reach out to the schools. Like in our case, I think we're going to go full circle with our conversation because the way I got involved, I mentioned earlier that my involvement with AIG Orlando was a one of the first things I did was that I would volunteer to get the tickets and hand out get the monies when at the events, right? So one of the events was an event that we had that supported the proceeds went to New Hope for Kids. So I met Gloria because I was at the table and Gloria was next to me because they were doing a raffle. And that's when our conversation, we just kind of struck up a conversation. And she told me about her organization and she told me about her needs. And I was like, well, I think we can help you. And I kind of like pitched the idea of like maybe we can help you with the annual report because that also very selfishly from the teacher's perspective, I was like, well, that gives my students a good opportunity to learn layout or
Mhm.
to get experience with layout or whatever. So I think it's maybe reaching out to some of these groups that could connect you with a designer, whether it's AIG Orlando or whether it's the schools or whatever, and have a designer that would be willing to work pro bono to do whatever, to if they want to build their portfolios or whatever. Especially the community-minded organizations like AIG Orlando might have a few people that they might know that would be interested in working pro bono. I don't think they should assume that they're going to get free work or whatever, but I think giving the designer an opportunity to know. There's also organizations like with AIG Orlando a few years ago, we had something called Change Makers,
Mhm.
where we had these events where we had these designers from the area that volunteered to be in teams. And there was 5 teams, I believe, supporting 5 different nonprofits. Each team had its nonprofits. And depending on what the nonprofits needed, the team would work on. So one team might have done the rebranded one of the organizations. The other team might have done some sort of kind of like events design or something like that, depending on what the organization needs. So I think it's reaching out to these design organizations and the design community to see if there's any opportunities for help from the
Yeah.
design community.
No, that's fantastic advice because a lot of these organizations don't know where to go. And it's funny because the way I got my two clients, which are both nonprofits.
Mm.
Funny enough, they were both like a fluke. I had one from LinkedIn who actually was my math tutor. So
Yeah.
he saw that I worked at UCF and was doing design, and he's like, I just need help. Can you please help me? And I was like, sure, why not? So started working with him, and it's been really awesome. And then another nonprofit I work with, they're like a different organization. I went to one networking event. I was on an elevator with a lady and she's like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a designer. She's like, oh my gosh, we really need a designer. We don't know who to go to. So she's like, hey, I was like, here's my business card. And she called and we started working together because they just had that need and didn't know who to contact. So just going to these different organizations, maybe like you mentioned, communities that like design communities like AIGA or universities that
Mhm.
have design programs is really a great way to connect. And I didn't think of that either. That's awesome.
There's people looking for designers and there's designers looking for work. But I think we just have to make our expectations clearly because I think sometimes um, like we just have to make sure that we know what we're getting into.
Mm,
Like it is a pro bono, is it a paid work, is it whatever, and that both parties are comfortable with how they're going into it. Again, I don't believe in free work. If anybody comes in, a lot of times people reach out to our email me and my colleagues looking for student work, and that usually translates into like we just need someone to do work for free for experience or for exposure, and
mhm,
that kind of thing I don't believe in. But if it is something that you're working pro bono and if it's something you believe in,
mhm.
I say, more power to you and let's go ahead and help somebody out.
Yeah, no, and as we wrap up our time together, I just have one final question. It's just personal. What has been your favorite project that you've worked on? I feel like that's a huge question, but do
So
you
that
have
is a huge.
something that comes to mind?
Oh, I don't know if I could pick just one. Um, Through the nonprofit space, I would say the comic book was really fun because of the impact that we made and how the family reacted to it and how Limitless reacted to it. And I think we got a lot of really good feedback and things from that. So that was really fulfilling. Um, we also started, I think it might have been around when you were a student, but I don't think it was called this, but we started something called Studio Pegasus in class, which is like a small kind of like, it's not quite an agency, but it's a small group of designers where we take outside work and things like that. And that we're trying to help it grow. And I think some of the projects that they've worked on, like they rebranded Celebrates the Arts and being able, even though it's not my direct design, like in your year, it was Jordan Stewart. Remember Jordan Stewart? So Jordan Stewart was and that team rebranded Celebrates the Arts. So I think seeing students like pitch their work and get feedback from the work and be able to defend their work is always, even though it's not my work, that part is really, really really fulfilling. And then most recently, I've been working with my friend Ethan Long, who's this children's book illustrator. Years ago, he had something on Disney Channel called Tasty Time was a Franc. I don't know if you ever, it's like a little dachshund that would cook and the cat would try to steal the food. Anyway, he has like a whole bunch of different children's books. So recently, he wrote a children's book which I illustrated, which is coming out
Hey.
on January in January will be released in January. Now it's available for pre-order. So that and I bring that up not as a shameless plug. So I won't even mention the name of the book, but you can look me up. But But that collaboration with a friend was really fun.
Mhm.
Just because it was something that we worked on like 5 years ago and then got unexpectedly picked up, and we were really kind of stoked about it. We were really excited. And then it got kind of like, I don't know, suddenly it happened, and we're really excited about it. It's like early reader book. So that kind of thing. And then in the past, I've worked in animation, creating storyboards. That was always fun. I don't know. It's hard to pick just one thing because, one of the beautiful things about our industry is that one day we could be talking to somebody about their company, and we could be a general contractor. We could be trying to talk about how we create a brochure that promotes their business of building a building or general contracting or whatever. And we can really get into that. And the next day, we're talking to someone about rocket ships and space travel and whatever. And then the next day, we can be talking about holistic medicine and whatever. So it's like we're able to dip our toes into so many industry that just keeps it really, really fun, at least in my opinion.
And it almost makes you feel like a mini expert in so many industries because you have to know it so well. So you're like, wow,
Right?
I know about holistic health. And you're like, I don't
Yeah.
even care. But
You're a
so
hit at parties, right? It was like, oh, I know a little bit about that.
like I got this. You're like, oh, you're a general contractor. I can tell you
Yeah,
about
okay. I can
that.
talk about that.
So no, it's very cool and very fulfilling. But Victor, I just want to thank you so much for your time and taking the time to just talk with me. Like I said, you've always been a huge inspiration, and that was such a great program, not because of the stuff we were doing, but just because of the way you taught, the way you encouraged us. So for me, that's taking me all the way over here where I can share with others now. So thank you so much for just being here. And so you can totally shamelessly plug your book, but I only have your two things. So if you want to stay up with Victor, you can follow him at Vic Davila at on Instagram, or you can find him at victordavila.com with his website. Check out some of his work, see the things that he's doing, and then he has lots of contact stuff there. So what's your book called? Feel free to shamelessly plug.
So my book is called Beep Bop Boop, and it's written by Ethan Long, and it's illustrated by myself, and it's available for pre-order on Amazon right now, and it should be out for sale January 2026.
But this is Let's Get on Brand, where mission meets design. And so, if you're interested in hearing more stories, or you have any more questions, or want to pick either of our brains, you can always reach out. But thank you.
I'm so proud of you, Sam. This has been fun. Thank you for having me.